The first rule of hunting, Commander Victoria Nash remembered, was to never let your prey know they're being hunted. As she lay perfectly still beneath the canopy of alien foliage, watching the Zarkali hunting party sweep past her position, she couldn't help but appreciate the irony. They thought they were the hunters. They were wrong. The massive purple-skinned aliens moved with practiced precision through the dense forest, their crystalline armor catching the dying light of the binary sunset. Their confidence was palpable, and it would be their undoing. Nash had spent the last 3 days studying their patterns, their behaviors, and most importantly, their weaknesses. It had started 6 Earth months ago when the Zarkali Empire made first contact. They arrived not with diplomats, but with what they called sporting enthusiasts. Their empire spanned thousands of worlds, and they had grown bored with their own supremacy. They needed entertainment, and hunting lesser species had become their favorite pastime. Humanity's first diplomatic mission had ended in disaster. The Zarkali representatives had laughed at Earth's technological level, dismissed their achievements, and declared humans perfect game for their hunting expeditions. They didn't even consider it a proper negotiation, merely a courtesy notification that Earth had been selected as their newest hunting ground. Nash hadn't been part of that diplomatic mission. She had been commanding a classified deep space training exercise when the news reached her. By the time she returned to Earth, the hunting had already begun. Isolated communities vanishing, strange ships appearing in restricted airspace, and trophy collections of human remains discovered in abandoned Zarkali camps. The United Earth Defense Council had approached her with an unorthodox plan. Instead of a direct military response, which would have been suicide against the Zarkali's superior technology, they needed someone to turn the hunters' game against them. Someone with extensive survival training, tactical expertise, and most importantly, the patience to play a very long game. Nash had volunteered immediately. Her background as both a special forces operator and a wilderness survival expert made her the perfect candidate. But what really sealed the deal was her understanding of predator psychology, both animal and human. The Zarkali, for all their advanced technology, were simply predators with fancy toys. Now, watching the hunting party pass beneath her position, Nash allowed herself a grim smile. They had taken the bait, the false trail she'd left leading to an abandoned human settlement. Their arrogance had made them predictable. They never bothered to look up, never considered that their prey might be studying them, learning their weaknesses. The lead hunter, distinguished by the ornate markings on his armor, raised a hand, signaling his team to halt. Nash held her breath as he activated a holographic display from his wrist device. She had observed this behavior before, they were checking their prey's tracking implant. What they didn't know was that Nash had already removed her implant and planted it on a particularly aggressive mountain lion she'd encountered 2 days ago. By now, that cat was probably halfway across the mountain range, leading another hunting party on a wild chase. The leader made a gesture that Nash had learned meant frustration. The hunting party spread out, their weapons at ready. They still hadn't looked up. Nash silently retrieved a small device from her tactical vest, salvaged from their own equipment during her first encounter with a solo hunter. She had spent weeks decoding its function, and now it was ready to serve her purposes. With deliberate slowness, she activated the device. A soft pulse rippled through the air, invisible but effective. One by one, the crystalline components of the Zarkali armor began to dim. Their advanced technology relied heavily on crystalline matrices for power distribution. The pulse she'd just sent out hadn't destroyed anything, it had simply induced a crystalline restructuring that would slowly drain their power systems. The hunters noticed immediately. Their weapons flickered, armor systems started failing, and their communication devices crackled with static. Nash watched as confusion turned to concern, then to the beginning edges of fear. They clustered together, a classic prey response. Reaching into another pocket, Nash retrieved a small metal sphere, another modified piece of Zarkali tech. She had reprogrammed it using knowledge gained from studying their equipment. The sphere would emit a signal that mimicked their hunting beacons, but with one crucial difference: it would attract every predator within 5 kilometers. This particular region had been selected carefully. The local wildlife included several large predator species that had already developed a taste for Zarkali flesh, thanks to Nash's careful conditioning over the past months. With their armor systems failing and their weapons unreliable, the hunters were about to become the hunted. Nash waited until the party had moved slightly past her position before letting the sphere roll silently down the tree trunk. It came to rest in a patch of phosphorescent moss, its soft pulsing indistinguishable from the natural environment. Then she began her careful retreat, moving from tree to tree with practiced silence. Behind her, the first roars began. The local predators were responding faster than expected. She heard the Zarkali shouting orders, their usual confidence replaced by urgency. A plasma rifle discharged, the sound distorted by failing power systems. More roars, closer now. The sound of running feet, not in formation but in panic. Nash didn't stay to watch. She had more work to do. This was just one hunting party of many, and her real target was still out there, the Zarkali command ship that coordinated all hunting operations in this sector. But with each small victory, each demonstration of human ingenuity over alien arrogance, she was sending a message that would eventually reach their empire's highest levels. Humanity wasn't game. We weren't prey. We were the apex predators of our world for a reason, and the Zarkali were about to learn why the hard way. As Nash disappeared into the gathering darkness, the sounds of chaos behind her brought a fierce satisfaction. The hunters had become the hunted, and this was only the beginning. The Zarkali command ship hung in low orbit like a violet thundercloud, its crystalline surface refracting the morning sunlight into prismatic patterns across the landscape. Commander Nash observed it through salvaged Zarkali binoculars from her mountain hideout, mentally updating her strategic assessment. 3 months of guerrilla warfare had taught her much about her enemies, but now it was time to escalate. The installation she discovered beneath her feet was proof that she wasn't the first to resist the Zarkali. Buried deep within the mountain, she'd found an abandoned research facility belonging to another alien species, the Nexarians, according to the translated data files. They too had been hunted by the Zarkali, but unlike humans, they'd chosen to retreat underground, eventually abandoning this facility when the hunters got too close. Nash ran her hand along the smooth, metallic walls of the facility. The Nexarians had left in a hurry, but they'd left behind something invaluable, detailed technical analyses of Zarkali technology. Their research confirmed what Nash had already suspected, the crystalline technology that made the hunters so formidable also made them vulnerable. Status report, she spoke into her modified communicator. The device, rebuilt using Nexarian specifications, operated on frequencies the Zarkali couldn't detect. Tower 1 in position, came the reply from Lieutenant James Rodriguez, one of the few military personnel who'd managed to link up with her over the past months. The energy signature is masked, just like the Nexarian files suggested. These bastards can't see us. Tower 2, ready, reported Captain Samira Patel from another location. Their patrol passed by 10 minutes ago. They didn't notice a thing. Nash allowed herself a small smile. The pieces were falling into place. The Nexarian facility had contained plans for a planetary defense system, one that had never been completed before they retreated. But with human ingenuity and desperate determination, Nash's growing team had spent the last month completing what the Nexarians had started. The system was elegant in its simplicity. 3 towers, positioned at precise geometric points, would create a resonance field that would interfere with the crystalline matrices the Zarkali relied upon. Not enough to destroy their technology outright, that would alert them to the threat immediately. Instead, it would create subtle, cumulative errors in their systems. Navigation would become unreliable. Sensors would give false readings. Communication would deteriorate. Remember, Nash broadcast to her team, subtle and systematic. We're not trying to win a battle today. We're starting a war of attrition. She checked her chronometer, salvaged from a Zarkali hunter and modified with Nexarian tech. The hunters operated on precise schedules, their arrogance making them predictable. In exactly 17 minutes, their main hunting party would launch for their daily expedition. Nash watched through her binoculars as the Zarkali shuttle descended from the command ship. Even from this distance, she could make out the ornate designs on its hull, status symbols among their kind, marking them as elite hunters. Their pride was about to become their weakness. Towers 2 and 3, commence power-up sequence, she ordered. The resonance field would take exactly 15 minutes to reach optimal frequency. The timing had to be perfect. As she waited, Nash reflected on how much had changed. The Zarkali had expected to find simple prey when they came to Earth. Instead, they'd found a species that refused to be hunted, that learned and adapted, that turned their own technology against them. But more than that, they'd found something they'd never encountered in all their centuries of hunting, prey that hunted back. The shuttle was halfway through its descent when Nash gave the final command. Activate the field. The effect was subtle, exactly as planned. The shuttle's descent pattern shifted slightly, its trajectory becoming less precise. Through her binoculars, Nash could see the crystalline hull flickering almost imperceptibly. The Zarkali wouldn't notice anything wrong, not immediately. But their systems would be feeding them false data, leading them into carefully prepared killing grounds. Multiple targets have entered Grid 7, Rodriguez reported. They're following the compromised NAV data perfectly. Grid 7 was where Nash had spent the past week preparing the terrain. Hidden pitfalls, modified stun mines, and redirected wildlife paths would ensure the hunting party had a very bad day. But more importantly, it would force them to call for backup, bringing more hunters into the compromised zone. I'm detecting increased communication between the shuttle and the command ship, Patel reported. They're starting to realize something's wrong with their equipment. Good, Nash replied. That means they'll start implementing their standard diagnostic protocols. Keep monitoring their channels. I want to know the moment they begin cycling their crystal matrices. That was the real target of today's operation. When the Zarkali detected systems malfunctions, they would attempt to reset their crystalline technology through a specific procedure. The Nexarians had documented this procedure thoroughly, and had discovered that during the reset, the crystals briefly became vulnerable to harmonic disruption. Command ship is beginning emergency protocols, Patel announced several hours later. Crystal matrix reset in progress. Nash activated her modified transmitter. All towers, switch to frequency pattern delta. Initiate full spectrum pulse on my mark. She counted down silently, watching the command ship through her binoculars. Timing would be crucial. Mark. The pulse was invisible, but its effects were not. The command ship's crystalline hull suddenly flickered violently, its prismatic patterns dissolving into chaos. Emergency lights activated across its surface as backup systems engaged. The shuttle, caught in the same pulse, lost power completely and had to make an emergency landing. Direct hit, Rodriguez reported, excitement creeping into his voice. Their primary systems are offline. Backup systems at 60% and falling. The crystalline matrix took more damage than we projected. Nash was already moving, heading to her secondary observation post. The Zarkali would adapt, they weren't stupid, just arrogant. But adapting would require them to acknowledge that their prey was capable of threatening them, something their pride would resist until it was too late. Begin Phase 2, she ordered. Rodriguez, activate the decoy transmitters. Patel, start the wildlife drives. Let's remind these hunters what it feels like to be hunted. As she made her way through the underground tunnels of the Nexarian facility, Nash allowed herself to feel a moment of fierce pride. Humanity had been pushed to the brink, but we hadn't broken. Instead, we'd done what we always did, we'd learned, adapted, and fought back. The Zarkali were about to learn a lesson that every predator on Earth had learned over the course of human evolution: just because something looks like prey, doesn't mean it isn't a predator in disguise. And humanity was the most dangerous predator of all, the one that learned from its mistakes, that used tools and strategy, that never stopped fighting back. The real hunt was just beginning. The crystalline display cast an eerie glow across the underground war room as Commander Nash studied the incoming transmissions. Each pulsing dot represented another resistance cell, another pocket of defiance against the Zarkali Empire. What had started as one human's stubborn refusal to be prey had evolved into something the hunters had never anticipated, an interstellar insurgency. Nash touched the holographic interface, zooming in on a new signal originating from the Cygnus sector. The message was encoded using the protocols they developed from modified Nexarian technology. As the decryption completed, a familiar surge of satisfaction coursed through her. Another hunting ground was rising up. "They're calling themselves the Shadowborn," reported Lieutenant Kira Vasiliev, Nash's newly appointed intelligence officer. The young lieutenant had proven invaluable in coordinating with other species. Apparently, they evolved in a binary star system. Their biology lets them manipulate light itself. The Zarkali thought they'd found easy prey, instead, they lost 3 hunting parties in the first week. Nash nodded, studying the detailed report. The Shadowborn were just the latest in a growing coalition of species who decided to fight back. Each brought their own unique abilities and perspectives to the resistance. The Nexarians contributed their technical expertise, the crystalline-based species known as the Lumini provided insight into Zarkali technology, and the hive-mind Morphtai offered unparalleled coordination abilities. "What's the status of Operation Lighthouse?" Nash asked, switching the display to show their primary staging areas. Captain Patel stepped forward, her fingers dancing across the interface. "Phase 1 is complete. We've established quantum entanglement relays in 17 former hunting grounds. The Zarkali can't detect or interrupt our communications anymore. The Lumini's crystal expertise was crucial, they helped us modify the technology to be completely invisible to Zarkali sensors." The display shifted again, showing a real-time map of known Zarkali hunting operations. Their empire was vast, but it was built on a foundation of arrogance and fear. They maintained control through their technological superiority and the carefully cultivated myth of their invincibility. Both were beginning to crack. "We've confirmed that the Morphtai stratagem was successful," Rodriguez added, entering the war room with fresh intelligence. "The Zarkali lost an entire battle fleet in the Helix Nebula. They still think it was a navigation error, but having an entire species that can reshape itself into living spacecraft tends to create some interesting tactical opportunities." Nash allowed herself a small smile. The Zarkali's greatest weakness was their inability to conceive of their prey as equals. Each species they hunted had developed unique adaptations and abilities to survive on their homeworlds. Now, those same adaptations were being turned against the hunters. "New contact," Vasiliev announced suddenly, her hands flying over the controls. "Coming in on the secure channel. Sir, you're going to want to see this." The holographic display shifted to show a new signal, originating from deep within Zarkali space. The source was unlike anything they'd seen before. The encryption was familiar, Nexarian-based, but the signal strength suggested it was coming from somewhere impossible. "That's coming from their homeworld," Nash realized, studying the coordinates. "Someone's broadcasting from inside the Imperial Palace itself." The message decoded slowly, revealing itself one layer at a time. As Nash read, her expression hardened. "It's from something calling itself the Underground Council. Apparently, we're not the only ones who think the Empire needs to fall. There's a resistance movement among the Zarkali themselves." The revelation sent a ripple of murmurs through the war room. The message detailed a growing faction within Zarkali society that opposed the hunting practices. Young Zarkali who had seen too many species fight back, who had begun to question the Empire's fundamental beliefs about superiority and worth. "They want to coordinate with us," Nash continued, reading further. "They've been watching our resistance grow, studying our tactics. They're offering us something we never thought possible, a way to strike at the heart of the Empire itself. The war room erupted in discussion, but Nash held up a hand for silence. She'd learned to trust her instincts over the past year of warfare, and something about this felt right. The Zarkali weren't inherently evil, they were the product of a culture built on conquest and dominance. Change had to come from within as well as without. Lieutenant Vasiliev, establish a secure channel with our new friends, Nash ordered. Captain Patel, begin adapting our quantum relays to accommodate the new protocols they've sent. Rodriguez, I want you to coordinate with the Shadowborn, their light manipulation abilities might be exactly what we need for this. As her team sprang into action, Nash studied the galactic map again. The resistance had grown beyond anything she could have imagined when she first started fighting back. Humans, with their adaptability and determination, had provided the spark. The Nexarians had supplied the technical foundation. The Shadowborn, Lumini, Morphtai, and others had each contributed their unique strengths. And now, it seemed, even some of the hunters had decided to reject their empire's cruel traditions. The irony wasn't lost on Nash. The Zarkali's practice of hunting lesser species had ultimately planted the seeds of their own transformation. Send a response to the Underground Council, Nash instructed Vasiliev. Tell them we're ready to cooperate, but we'll need proof of their sincerity. And add this, tell them that on Earth, we have a saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. The resistance was about to enter a new phase. The hunters weren't just facing their former prey anymore, they were facing the future their own actions had created. A future where strength wasn't measured by the ability to dominate, but by the wisdom to cooperate and adapt. The hunt was transforming into something else entirely, a revolution that would reshape the galaxy. The Imperial Arena of Glory on the Zarkali homeworld had never been so quiet. Commander Nash stood in the shadows of its massive crystalline archways, watching as the emergency session of the High Council devolved into chaos. Beside her, her Zarkali counterpart from the Underground Council, First Speaker Ixon, shifted uncomfortably in his ceremonial armor. They still don't understand, Ixon whispered, his purple skin darkening with emotion. Even now, when the evidence is right in front of them. Nash watched as another council member rose to speak, his voice echoing through the arena. The counselor was demanding immediate military action against the rebellious hunting grounds, calling for the deployment of the Empire's entire fleet. He didn't realize he was playing right into their hands. Understanding isn't the goal anymore, Nash replied softly. Action is. The past 3 months had seen the most ambitious coordinated operation in the history of resistance. While the High Council had been distracted by increasing hunting ground rebellions, the real work had happened right here, in the heart of their empire. The Shadowborn had infiltrated every major military installation, using their light-bending abilities to gather intelligence and plant sophisticated sabotage devices. The Lumini had worked with Zarkali dissidents to corrupt the Empire's crystalline technology from within, introducing subtle flaws that would only become apparent at the worst possible moment. And humanity's contribution? Strategy. Patience. The ability to coordinate disparate groups toward a common goal. The very traits the Zarkali had once mocked as weaknesses had proven to be their undoing. Signal from the Morphtai Collective, Lieutenant Vasiliev's voice whispered through Nash's modified communicator. Their ships are in position. The Nexarian defense grid is online. We're ready. Nash touched her own communicator, sending the predetermined signal to all resistance cells. Across the galaxy, on every hunting ground and in every Zarkali military installation, the real operation was about to begin. Honor to the hunt, the council member was still speaking, his voice rising to a crescendo. We will show these lesser species. The chamber plunged into darkness as every crystalline power system simultaneously failed. When the emergency lights activated seconds later, the council members found themselves surrounded. The Shadowborn materialized from their light-bent concealment, while Morphtai warriors flowed out of ventilation systems they'd infiltrated weeks ago. But most shocking to the assembled council was the sight of their own military officers removing their helmets to reveal themselves as members of the Underground Council. "The hunt is over," Nash declared, stepping into the light. Her voice, amplified by Nexarian technology, filled the massive chamber. "Your empire wasn't built on superiority, it was built on fear. Fear you instilled in others, and fear you used to control your own people." Ixon moved to stand beside her, removing his ceremonial mask in a gesture that sent gasps through the assembly. "We've watched you turn our proud civilization into nothing more than glorified bullies. You've corrupted our youth with tales of supremacy while hiding the truth, that every species you've hunted has proven themselves more worthy than we are." The chamber erupted in shouts and protests, but they died quickly as the main holographic display activated, showing real-time footage from across the Empire. Every military vessel was disabled, their crystalline cores corrupted beyond repair. Every hunting ground was rising up, using modified Zarkali technology against their former oppressors. And most devastating of all, the footage showed dozens of Zarkali colonies openly declaring their support for the revolution. "Your empire fell long before today," Nash continued. "It fell the moment you decided that might makes right. That the strong can prey on the weak. Because you never stopped to consider that those you considered weak might be strong in ways you couldn't understand." She gestured, and the holographic display shifted to show recordings from various hunting grounds. Humans using ingenuity to turn Zarkali technology against them. Shadowborn bending light to create phantom armies. Lumini reprogramming entire crystalline networks. Morphtai transforming into living weapons. Nexarians building defense systems that rendered Zarkali technology useless. Each species you hunted had survived countless challenges on their homeworlds, Nash explained. They developed unique strengths, unique ways of thinking. By hunting them, you forced them to adapt those strengths to fighting you. And by driving them together, you created something unprecedented, a coalition of species working together, each contributing their unique abilities to a common cause. The council chamber had fallen silent. Even the most hardline members could see the truth displayed before them. Their empire, built on the premise of Zarkali's superiority, had been systematically dismantled by the very species they dismissed as inferior. "We're not here for revenge," Ixon announced. "We're here to offer a choice. The Underground Council has spent years preparing for this moment. We have the support of the colonies, the military, and the younger generation. The hunting can end today, and the Zarkali can join the galactic community as equals. Or you can resist, and watch everything you've built crumble to dust." Nash watched as the reality of their situation sank in. The Zarkali were proud, but they weren't stupid. They could see that their options had been systematically eliminated. Their technology was compromised, their military was divided, and their empire was surrounded by species they'd underestimated for far too long. One by one, the council members began to signal their surrender. Not with the formal gestures of their traditions, but with simple, exhausted nods. They'd finally learned what humans had known since their earliest days, that true strength lies not in dominating others, but in working together to overcome challenges. "Prepare for Phase 2, Nash spoke into her communicator. The fall of the Zarkali Empire was just the beginning. The real challenge lay ahead, building something new from the ashes of the old. But as she looked around at the assembled representatives of a dozen species, each contributing their unique strengths to a common cause, she knew they were ready for that challenge. The age of the hunt was over. The age of cooperation was about to begin. 5 years after the fall of the Zarkali Empire, Commander Victoria Nash stood at the observation deck of the Nexus station, watching ships from a dozen different species dock at the massive space station. The crystalline architecture still maintained its purple hue, a reminder of its Zarkali origins, but now it served as the headquarters for the Galactic Cooperative, a very different kind of interstellar organization. The latest arrival caught her attention, a Zarkali diplomatic vessel, its design modified to incorporate technology from multiple species. The sight would have been unthinkable half a decade ago. Now, it was just another day at the Nexus. The Integration Council is ready to begin, Commander, announced first speaker Ixon, approaching from behind. The years had weathered his purple skin, but his eyes held a vitality that had been missing during the Empire's final days. Though I wish you'd accept the title of ambassador. You've more than earned it. Nash shook her head, smiling. Commander suits me fine. Keeps me grounded, reminds me of where this all started. She turned from the viewport to face her old ally. How are the latest educational reforms proceeding? Better than expected, Ixon replied as they walked toward the council chambers. The younger generation is particularly eager to learn from other species. Last month's cultural exchange program on Earth was oversubscribed 3 times over. The corridors of Nexus Station exemplified the changes they'd fought so hard to achieve. Shadowborn light sculptors worked alongside Lumini crystal shapers, their combined artistry creating spaces that seemed to defy physics. Morphtai shared their shape-shifting insights with Nexarian scientists, leading to breakthroughs in adaptive technology. And everywhere, humans worked alongside their former hunters, their adaptability and creativity helping bridge cultural gaps. Lieutenant Rodriguez's report from the Helix Nebula is encouraging, Nash commented, reviewing data on her modified communicator. The Joint Human-Zarkali Ranger program is showing impressive results. Turns out your people's hunting instincts can be redirected toward conservation and protection. They entered the council chamber, where representatives from all member species gathered around a massive holographic display. The image showed the known galaxy, with bright points indicating cooperative projects and joint ventures. Where the Zarkali Empire had once enforced unity through fear, the Galactic Cooperative fostered it through mutual benefit and respect. Today's agenda includes the proposal for expanding the Shadowborn Stealth Technology Program, announced Captain Patel, now serving as Chief of Operations. The Morphtai Collective has suggested some fascinating applications for search and rescue operations. Nash took her seat, noting how the chamber's design had evolved. Gone were the hierarchical arrangements of the Imperial era. Instead, the space encouraged equal participation, with adaptive environments that could accommodate the needs of any species. Before we begin, Nash addressed the assembly, I'd like to acknowledge a significant milestone. As of this morning, the last Zarkali hunting ground has been converted into a wildlife preserve. The transformation of your society is complete. Ixon stood, his voice carrying emotion. Thanks to you, Commander Nash, and to humanity. You showed us a better way. When we thought ourselves superior, you proved that true strength lies in diversity and cooperation. We all played our part, Nash corrected gently. Humans may have provided the spark, but every species here contributed to the flame. The Shadowborn taught us to see beyond the obvious. The Lumini showed us how to transform our weaknesses into strengths. The Morphtai demonstrated the power of adaptation. The Nexarians proved that technology should serve understanding, not dominance. She gestured to the holographic display, which shifted to show the newest joint project, a massive scientific expedition preparing to explore unknown regions of space. The fleet comprised vessels from every member species, each contributing their unique capabilities to the mission. And the Zarkali, Nash continued, nodding to Ixon, showed us that change is possible, no matter how deeply ingrained old ways might be. Your young people's eagerness to learn from other species, to right the wrongs of the past, that's the real victory here. The chamber filled with murmurs of agreement. The transformation hadn't been easy. Centuries of imperial conditioning didn't disappear overnight. But the results were undeniable. Trade flourished where conquest had once ruled. Scientific advancement accelerated as different species shared their knowledge. Cultural exchanges bred understanding where fear had once dominated. We've come far, Nash concluded, but our greatest adventures lie ahead. Each species here evolved to survive unique challenges on their homeworlds. Together, we're more than the sum of our parts. We're a living proof that diversity isn't a weakness to be hunted, but a strength to be celebrated. The council session proceeded, discussing new initiatives and addressing challenges. But Nash found her thoughts drifting to that first day in the forest, when she decided that humanity wouldn't be prey. She couldn't have imagined then that her act of defiance would lead to this, a galactic society where former hunters and hunted worked together as equals. Later, as the session concluded, Nash returned to the observation deck. A group of young Zarkali students was departing for Earth, eager to learn human methods of adaptation and innovation. Nearby, a team of human engineers collaborated with Lamini crystal shapers on a new form of sustainable energy. A Shadowborn artist was teaching a class on light manipulation to a diverse group of students from various species. Quite a view, isn't it? Ixon joined her at the viewport. Sometimes I wonder what our ancestors would think of all this. Nash watched as another ship arrived, this one carrying delegates from a newly discovered species seeking to join the cooperative. They'd probably think we're crazy, she replied with a smile. But that's the point, isn't it? The galaxy needed a little crazy. It needed someone to look at an empire built on fear and say, no, we can do better. The stars stretched out before them, infinite in their possibility. Somewhere out there, new challenges waited. New species to meet, new mysteries to solve, new boundaries to push. But they would face them together, not as hunters and prey, but as equals in the greatest adventure of all, discovery. The hunt was over. The journey was just beginning.